I was advised that a lot of things about me would be brought up in court that I might not necessarily want people to know, that they'd bring up sexual history, they'd speak to my friends, they'd speak to my family, they'd get photos of me off Facebook and even perhaps analyse what I was wearing in certain situations.
I consider myself lucky because I'm one of the few victims who managed to actually have a conviction against their perpetrator. And so I think the statistics are 6% of reported rapes result in a conviction in England and Wales, and actually only about 15% of rapes are reported. So the statistics are pretty damning and actually horrifying in a lot of ways.
And those reasons can range from so many from feeling like we won't be believed.
The fear of causing a fuss or just not being believed, or nothing's going to come of it. And it's quite stressful to tell people that you're close to, let alone strangers in a police station.
When it happened to me, I spent the first few days denying that anything bad had happened. And it wasn't for another month before I actually felt I need to go and report this. But of course, by that point, no physical evidence, and very much a he said, she said situation.
And if I were to lose the case, which they said was more likely, I would have to pay the legal fees, which as a student I never would have been able to afford. It's something that even 2 years on I'm still dealing with today. I felt like I never really got justice for myself, and this person is married and I know that he has 4 young children and he's still perhaps doing the same job. I feel like I'm the one that's being punished.
My rapist was arrested about 5 or 6 days after the assault, and he didn't plead guilty, so that meant that 11 months from then there was a trial that had been scheduled. So I had to kind of wait 11 months for this trial to happen, and it was like my life was on hold, effectively. And it was an awful experience for me, because just the thought of having to testify in person in great detail about your rape in the same room as your perpetrator is terrifying, right? And I can't imagine actually if you sat through that whole process and then you still didn't get a conviction, that must be incredibly damaging in terms of, and it must have an impact on your ability to recover in some ways.
About 6 years ago, I was sexually assaulted by a very senior person. And then reported that to the police. The power imbalances of someone high profile who was seen as a reliable witness, it being all about one person's word against other people's word, and if someone has more power and status, then the likelihood is that they're going to be believed by the jury and get found not guilty.
When I was researching for my novel, I ended up observing a number of rape trials. Oftentimes when victims are being questioned, there were all these reactions from clerks saying, I remember clerks saying like, well, I don't really think she's telling the truth, and I don't think she's telling the truth. And I would ask her, well, why do you think that? And they'd say, well, she's not really acting the way like a rape victim would act. But how do you know how rape victims are supposed to act? I think unfortunately we go, maybe because of movies and TV, we have this image of how rape victims are supposed to be. They're supposed to be weak and vulnerable and cry and maybe be a little bit feminine and not be too strong. But if they seem too put together and too articulate, well then maybe they're not actually telling the truth, right? Because they don't seem distressed enough. It's a little bit ignorant because in reality people react in all different ways. People of all different personality types become victims. So your personality and your attitude towards the world is going to affect the way that you testify.
I think that I wish that I'd known to go to the police sooner. Although it's really difficult to speak out, especially to strangers, I think that if you feel like you can, it's so important, because it only strengthens your case being brought to justice.
It's not always perfect, but I do think it's important for people to be engaging with it if they can.
So my advice would be seek advice from other people who really understand the system, and really weigh it up. Don't feel that you're in any way responsible. Don't take the burden of creating a better society on yourself, because I think your first duty is to yourself and to your mental health.